Shalom. This is Yeshua Yisrael, giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. Want to sit there and go over the fact that there are many people who want to sit there and state that the children of Israel or the house of Jacob plagiarized from the Egyptian culture. Now, one of the things to sit there and go over once again in definition is the definition of the word plagiarize. To take ideas, writings, etc., from another and passing them off as one's own without giving proper respect to the owner thereof. So I got my different definitions of what plagiarism is from different sources. All right, now the next definition we're going to go over is the word slave. And that is a human being who is owned as property by another human. Now, want to sit there and explain something due to certain conversations that has happened. There are many people who sit there and state that the Bible is plagiarized from Egyptians. Now, in the Bible, we see several instances in which it speaks about slaves, slavery, enslavement, captivity, so forth and so on. That if that's the case, and the Bible does speak on those matters, we have to ask, where then, inside of any Egyptian record, was the idea or the concept of slavery, enslavement, captivity plagiarized from the Egyptians? Did the Egyptians speak about such matters inside of their records? According to many brothers and sisters who sit there and speak about saying that the Bible is plagiarized out of Egyptian records and everything of that sort, are some of the same people who say emphatically, no, ancient Egypt didn't even have any slaves. There is even no slave inside of Egyptian language for the word slave. Okay, so if let's taking that concept for instance, that there is no Egyptian word for the word slave, according to some, and so forth and so on. If that is the case, where then did the Bible copy from to get the idea of what a slave is? Because slaves are mentioned inside of the Bible. Now, that right there just goes to show that, no offense intended, there are some people who are not thinking. And I like to sit there and go over a couple of maps, if we will. Okay, one map in particular, brothers and sisters, is actually from a book called Premier World Atlas, Rand McNally. Okay, I got this out of a store called Strands. Pretty good atlas. All right, now let's look at this right here, if we will. This here is a map of Africa. All right, now I want to sit there and pay certain attention to certain things, if we will, brothers and sisters. All right, first off, looking at this map right here, this here is Egypt, right? This being the Nile River, which flows from south to north. Libya, Chad, Algeria, Mali, Mauritania. Okay, now let's understand something. That yes, these particular places here were colonized and named by European people as time went on. You understand? But let's understand something even before what is referred to as colonization, and that is that this place, which is called Egypt today, belonged to this place. Okay? This place, on the other hand, did not belong to this place. What am I saying? I am saying that Egypt belongs to Africa. Africa does not belong to Egypt. And what some people unfortunately have done, brothers and sisters, is has given a people a romanticized and thus forced interpretation and understanding of black history once it comes down to Africa and Egypt and so forth and so on. You understand? And so when certain like things like this is presented, it's like, oh well, you know, you don't know what you're talking about and so forth and so on. All you have to do is go into a record about Kamos, Dynasty 17 of Egypt, and you can look this up. And you may want to look it up if you care to under Kamos, Kamose, Kamos attitude toward the Nubians and the Hyksos. And you will see what he said about those that are also within the same continent of what we call Africa today. Okay, now, another thing to sit there and point out, brothers and sisters, is this right here. And that is, I'm going to show a couple of pictures of this one right here. This here being what they refer to as pre-dynastic Egypt. Now, the point in going over this is simply because you have Lower Egypt, the Fayum, that becomes important in other discussions. You have Upper Egypt, okay? This is what they refer to as pre-dynastic Egypt. So let that be noted and understood. This here being the Mediterranean Sea, which is north of Egypt. All right, now, the next thing to get into is what they call the Old Kingdom Egypt. Here we see the Delta, that's in the northern part, which they call Lower Egypt. Then you got, as stated, Lower Egypt, Upper Egypt, you got Lower Nubia, and then you got Upper Nubia. Now, all of this right here still, brothers and sisters, is emphatically belonging to the place that we ultimately call Africa. Now, as stated, Egypt belongs to Africa, not Africa belongs to the Egyptians. Then you have here the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. And the map that we see here has Lower Egypt, Upper Egypt, Lower Nubia, and Upper Nubia. And this right here shows you some of those principal cities. Memphis, then you have Hermopolis, Abydos. Now, not to get sidetracked, this becomes important concerning the issue with Abydos, because during what they call Dynasty 19 is when they have what they refer to as the Abydos list of the kings of Egypt. And to this day, I have yet, not to be debatable, not to sound arrogant, not saying that I know everything, but to date, I have yet been able to get an answer in which people sit there and state, well, we don't have the records from Manetho left on record. We have Africanus and Josephus and others. What I'm getting to is the list of kings that they have in the chronological order of Egypt is actually, no offense intended, incorrect. It's not chronology ordered. It's not done right. So the list that they're talking about that they usually use is the Saqqara list, the Abydos list, as well as the Polemo list that they got from Dynasty 5. So you got two lists from Dynasty 19, and then let's not forget the Turin Royal Papyrus. So you got the Turin Royal Papyrus, Abydos, Saqqara, and Polemo. All of those which all predate Dynasty 21. So if that be the case, then how do you got to this date on 2015, the list of the kings that from Dynasty 21 onward to date? And I've spoke with people in colleges and so forth and so on. And to date, no one has given a satisfactory answer or an answer in certain cases on how is it that all of the lists that you speak of that's acceptable, quote unquote, such as Abydos, Saqqara, Turin Royal Papyrus, and the Polemo list of the kings of Egypt, all of that predates Dynasty 21. So how then do we know about the dynasties after it? Okay, let's move on. The next thing to sit there and point out, brothers and sisters, is this right here, if we will. This here is a map, and we are somewhat familiar with this, of what we call the United States. Okay? You got New York there in the pink. That's Virginia in the yellow. North Carolina in the pink. Florida in the pink. Texas in the orange. And so forth and so on. That being the United States of America. The point in going over that particular part is simply, brothers and sisters, to let it be noted, not trying to sound disrespectful or offensive or anything of that sort. But let's look at it even from this point here. Let's look at it from the New Kingdom of Egypt, right? All melanated people, all black people did not come from Egypt. Okay? What they call the Nile Valley civilization is not the birthplace of each and every single black nation and black racial group on the earth. I want you to understand what's being stated. Not all people of color came from, belong to, out of the land of Egypt. One more time. All black people, brothers and sisters, did not come from this place here in the map that you see there in the yellow. That's very, very important to let it be noted and understood. Not everybody came from here that's of color. You understand? You got people from here. You got people from here. You got people all over this particular place here who do not even state that they even came from this place here, and they are still black and are people of color. What I'm presenting and mentioning that aspect is that unfortunately poor Egypt has been pimped. and it's an actual atrocity to the ancient Egyptian culture once you get right down into it. Okay, now I like to go, brothers and sisters, into the scriptures, if we will. Deuteronomy in the Bible, Deuteronomy, the 23rd chapter, if we will. We are in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 23. We are in verse 15. It says this: Thou shalt not deliver unto his master the servant which is escaped from his master unto thee. He shall dwell with thee, even among thee, in that place which he shall choose in one of thy gates, where it liketh him best. Thou shalt not oppress him. So what's being stated right here in Deuteronomy 23 is that you're not supposed to return a runaway slave. So now, what part in Egyptian culture can this be derived from? Where inside of any Egyptian papyrus, mastaba, stela, scarab, Karnak, what have you, the Kemunhotep wall, and so forth and so on. Where inside of Egyptian records do you see this kind of quote right here? Because if you're able to show that, then that means that ancient Egyptians had a record of there being slaves anywhere upon the earth. And if they did have it, that means that there is a word for it inside of the Egyptian language, which means that some of the claims that many brothers and sisters make about Egypt is false. There are several places that actually speak about slavery and slaves inside of the Bible itself. So here's the point. You have some people sit there and state, well, the Bible was translated and plagiarized, or should I say, pardon me, that the Bible was plagiarized out of the Egyptians or from the Egyptians by other people and then used later on to enslave us. Not to be redundant, but then you have to sit there as asked to show where does it speak about slaves ever in Egyptian records. See, they're not, no offense intended, not trying to jump the gun, not trying to say I know everything, not to sound dogmatic, not to sound arrogant, not to sound presumptuous. But what's going to wind up happening is the subject usually is changed. Well, we all African, we all black people, we all need to unite anyway. Well, we were saying that before you brought the controversy about the Bible being plagiarized. The Bible itself teaches us that we need to unite. Oh yeah, let me show that, just in case for some who may not have read it or don't think that it talks about such. Okay, so let's go. If we read in the scriptures, brothers and sisters, we are in Zephaniah 2, verse 1. Gather yourselves together, yea, gather together, O nation not desired. See, it's telling you to unite. And what nation is not desired? Our people. We are the people that's not desired. Nobody wants us. We already know that. Now, can that be found inside of any Egyptian record? Brothers and sisters, I'm not abreast on reading the Metuneta. I don't know how to read the Demotic, and I do not know how to read the Hieratic writing, which was different writing of the ancient Egyptians. So I'll have to ask those who are abreast and knowledgeable and literate inside of what they call the hieroglyphic writings, the Metuneta, as well as the hieratic, as well as the Demotic writing. If you can sit there and please show where it speaks about people gathering together, and then I can sit there and show where the Chinese speak about gathering together, where the Nubians speak about gathering together, where the Moabites spoke about gathering together, where the Romans spoke about gathering together, where the Native Americans spoke about gathering together. Are you also going to sit there and say that all of them copied out of Egypt? Emphatically, that's foolishness. You see, but if you're saying that ancient Egypt had no slaves and had no concept of what enslavement is, then please explain how in the Bible, if the Bible came out of Egypt, that it has it speaking as we spoke in Deuteronomy 23, verse 15 to 16. The next other point I would like to mention, brothers and sisters, is to the people who sit there and state that, well, Egypt was the dawn of civilization and everything began out of there and so forth and so on. And I'm not saying that Egypt didn't do a lot and had a lot. What I'm saying is that Egypt had a lot for Egypt. Egypt did not have a lot for the world. You see, that's historically proven. Now, the next thing concerning that same type of matter is that if the Bible was plagiarized from Egypt,